hands. Light the candles.
Oh,
Here,
who would like to light the candles? Sharon's going to light the candles. Thank you.
I can do this.
If you can do it.
You want to try? I'm not very good at it. Do the trigger. There you go.
I got it before.
Maybe.
Sharon, give her the lighter.
Oh, yeah.
Candle lighter.
Use that. Right. There you go.
Thank you. That was good. Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
How are you? Pretty good? Okay. Okay. Good. Yes. Still a chilly spring morning, but I hope you were able to get out yesterday when it was actually nice out for a while. Throw one nice day at us. Welcome to United Faith Community for this service of worship. I'm Jeff. I'm part of the planning team here for a discussion Sunday worship service, and just happy that you are here today. For the passing of the peace, I decided I never get it right. So I'm going to ask Ash if she would, along with Jacob and Lisa, to come forward and do the passing of the peace.
Right here. No, right here, Lisa. Okay. Okay. And also with you. Thanks.
Simple, but I just don't get it. Do we have announcements this morning?
We have our outdoor joint confirmation service coming up on Sunday, May 15th. That will be at Baker Park Reserve. We're confirming 4 of our young people in that service, along with several others from Union, Linden Hills, and Edina Morningside congregations. Service will be at 10 a.m. Bring a lawn chair. And we're doing sort of a potluck afterwards. Bring your own meal. Picnic lunch.
Picnic lunch.
Yeah.
May 15th,
May 15th.
Baker Park. Wonderful. Okay.
I have one other announcement. So yesterday afternoon, I got to go meet with Pat from the Ballet Puerto Rico group. And Carlos and Rose, yep. And we did their websites, and so their websites are out. So if people want to check those out, I can get the links to you or whatever. But if you have pictures, particularly with the Ballet Puerto Rico one, you know, we can post those for them, and then you can also do reviews or, you know, kind of help promote them as well. So I'll certainly share those afterwards, but it was exciting to go work with them, since I know we've worked with them in other capacities, and we'll set it up so that the donations on their site can be done through our site, through our donations. So if people want to donate to them, they can do it through our giving portal kind of thing, so. Perfect.
Thank you, Shelley.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay.
We also have our estate antique collectible handmade sale coming up.
I got plants.
Yeah. That will be in 2 weeks. I believe it's the 6th and 7th of May, Friday and Saturday. Coincides with the occasional weekend, sales weekend here in Buffalo.
Good. I invite you to stand for prayers calling the community together this morning and remain standing for the hymn following. And when we get to the part in bold, if you would join me in those words. Grandfather, look at our brokenness. We know that in all creation, only the human family has strayed away from the sacred way. We know that we are the ones who are divided, and we are the ones who must come back together to walk the sacred way. Grandfather, sacred one, teach us love, compassion, and honor, that we may heal the earth and heal each other. Lord, in these times when we fear we are losing hope, or feel our efforts are futile, let us see in our hearts and minds the image of your resurrection, and let us be the source of courage and strength. With that, and in your company, help us to face challenges and struggles against all that is born of injustice. In our time of prayer today, I would ask if there are any specific prayer requests that anyone has to raise up this morning.
I have a coworker that last Sunday delivered twins. I don't remember, but weeks early anyway, and she is doing fine. The twins are in NICU for a while yet, but they're all doing good.
I have a coworker whose father is aging a bit and starting to have some mental, capacity, dementia, kind of struggling with the mental side of aging a bit. And so it's a new adventure for her to try to figure out how to care for an aging parent. She could use some prayers of support.
I would ask prayers for my friend Rick. Some of you know Rick. They've been to some of our bonfire services. Rick is having some health issues these days, interrupting their transition back from Arizona back here to Minnesota, but struggling with that a bit.
Thinking of Shelley's co-worker, I have a son who never speaks about his aging father. But also, I'm happy to report that my son and his wife are expecting their first child. So that's exciting, very exciting for us.
Another one that comes to mind as I watch the flags fly out in the window because it's so windy and how cold it is here. But with the wind, I know there's been all the wildfires out in Arizona and New Mexico, and the wind, here just as a reminder of what that's like there because it's been pretty windy too.
Yeah, thank you. And obviously continued prayers for the people of Ukraine as the war and mass destruction and atrocities of war continue in Ukraine, and pray for the people there and pray for peace. Let us be in prayer. Gracious Lord of heaven and earth, we thank you for this gift of a new day. May the sun shine upon us and upon your children everywhere, especially in war-torn Ukraine and everywhere there is strife among your children.
No signal listed on.
Open our hearts to feel your love today and all days. We thank you for the gift of this spiritual community and the opportunity to worship together. May we find serenity here today. Open our hearts that we may be nourished with your peace and love. Cleanse us from our feelings of guilt, anger, shame, and emotions that wear us down. Help us to surrender our heartaches and disappointments to you. And especially we hold up to you this day Sharon's co-worker who has had twins, and we pray for their good health. And we pray for Shelley's co-worker who has an aging father and all the concerns and all the special needs that may be required. And we pray for Rick to return to good health so he can continue to enjoy his family and all the things that bring vitality to him. And for those who are suffering the effects of climate change, and especially the wildfires that continue in the West and the Southwest, open our hearts, restore us, give us energy and vitality. On this day, we celebrate Earth Day. We thank you for your magnificent creations, ourselves, our surroundings, and the world and universe in which we live. Help us to be vigilant caretakers of our precious earth and of all your creation. Gracious God, we thank you for the gift of this new day. May the sun shine upon us and upon all people today. Keep us and keep all people in your loving embrace. This we pray in your Son's name, remembering the prayer that he taught us, and it is on the back of your bulletin. Great Mother Hen, within and beyond our words, we embrace your name with great meaning and power. May your way and reality become ours throughout all space and time. Provide us what we need for the day. Free us from cycles of mutual wounding. Help us lead lives of integrity and fortify us against injustice and trouble. For there is power that we all share in God's community, and there is glory in our participation in it. We are part of the legacy of ancestors and descendants in God's ever-expanding family. Amen. During the time of the prophet Micah, he lived 5 centuries before the birth of Jesus in Palestine. Micah was a Jew, and he saw what was going on in his community. The rich were getting richer. The rich were using their affluence to control and manipulate the government to their needs and their wants. And Micah saw all this, and he made a remarkable statement. And in some way, it kind of pulls together the entire meaning of the First Testament when he writes in Micah 6:8, God has told you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God. Join me in prayer. Startle us, gracious one, with a yearning for justice so expansive, grace so encompassing, and compassion so deep that we are fortified in faith and committed to living the gospel life through loving our neighbor as ourself and walking lightly and gently on our journey upon our planet home you have graced us with. Amen. Well, I'm going to start this morning by breaking one of the important rules I learned about preaching. One of my preaching professors believed that people easily became distracted and probably tired of hearing about your children and especially about your pets. So he strongly admonished his students to not preach about them. Well, I have from time to time, as some of you may remember, told a tale or two about my children. And this morning, I want to take an opportunity to share a story about my 2 golden retrievers, Sadie and Ruthie. They're a grandmother-granddaughter duo. Sadie will be 12 a week from today, and Ruthie is 1.5 years. Now, I don't know if you've read the book or seen the movie Marley and Me, movie about in the book about the loving but highly energetic, disruptive, and poorly trained yellow lab that in many ways describes Ruthie. At home, we sometimes refer to our dog as the sweet, loving grandmother Sadie. And thing number 2. I love her dearly, but Ruthie is an adolescent dog with way too much energy for any one dog to have. I try to run some of that energy off by taking Ruthie and occasionally Sadie, but her hips bother her a bit now. So, but I will take Ruthie most days for a 4-mile trek at Nye Nature Center, a mile north of Maple Lake. Ruthie, being the free spirit that she is, finds every mud hole and dirty place in that park, so that by the end of our walk, she often looks more like a black lab than she does a golden retriever. She loves to run the trails and woods with her nose to the ground, catching every scent. I should have sent her with Ole turkey hunting because last Thursday she fleshed out a big tom from some tall grass. We've also seen wood ducks and mallards, egrets, countless songbirds, and Canadian geese. We saw a fox once and plenty of deer. We also regularly see a pair of bald eagles that call the park home. I enjoy our walks as much as Sadie and Ruthie do. Every day you see something new, especially in springtime. Now I'm looking forward to when we can really have spring, but when that day comes, the park will be alive with innumerable hues of green and a myriad of delicate spring wildflowers in bloom. Of course, the dogs will run right past these things, searching for the next great scent or a squirrel to chase. But to me, I am constantly reminded of the incredible abundance and diversity all around us. Today in worship, we celebrate Earth Day, a day to raise awareness and appreciation for the Earth's natural environment. Established in 1970 and endorsed by the United Nations, Earth Day also has been commended to Christians by both the National Council of Churches and the World Council of Churches as a time to both celebrate God's creation and as a reminder of our need to care for God's rich, abundant, and ongoing blessing. One of the reasons Earth Day was a almost instant success back in 1970 was because of a massive oil spill off the coast of Santa Barbara, California. That oil spill threatened miles, many tens of miles of pristine shoreline. It was a wake-up call for many that we could no longer take a clean and unsullied environment for granted. But human beings are apparently slow learners, and a renewed effort to protect and care for our planet has been spotty at best. Now, I'm not going to fill your minds with a lot of facts and figures this morning about what human beings have done to the natural environment for several reasons. First, you've heard them before, and they're depressing. Since the dawn of the Industrial Revolution 300 years ago, our reliance on petroleum and coal has immeasurably harmed our atmosphere, killed vast stretches of forests, and polluted countless lakes and rivers. A bulging human population has led to unsustainable agricultural practices and overfishing in many parts of the world. Hyper-consumerism has produced industrial waste, which is rapidly killing the oceans and the coral reefs, polluting our groundwater, melting our ice caps, and leaving behind mountains of trash. The second reason, or another reason, why I'm not going to cite a lot of facts and figures, is that the data can often be interpreted in more than one way. The Industrial revolution's reliance on petroleum products and coal has done immeasurable harm, but it has also lifted up countless millions of families worldwide, lifted them out of poverty and back-breaking labor. Modern agricultural practices are unsustainable in parts of this country and the world, but they also feed more of the world's hungry, more nutritiously than ever. And so, while an industrialized world economy has created mountains of toxic waste and caused all sorts of other serious problems, it has raised the standard of living for many millions across the globe. Nevertheless, I am greatly concerned about the world that we are leaving our children. For example, so-called fracking, the practice of injecting under very high pressure unregulated chemicals and proprietary chemicals that are mostly unknown to government regulators and the general public, deep into the ground, often under the very water tables communities rely upon for safe, pure drinking water. This may leave future generations wondering how their parents and grandparents could have been so naive. And consider the fast tracking of oil drilling that the current administration is now proposing, or the proposed mining of nickel and other precious metals in northern Minnesota. I highly doubt future generations will applaud our permanent destruction of planet Earth. Is it not more likely that they will question our sanity, or at least our common sense? Now, some may counter that we can't just guess at what others might think of us in 100 years. We need to put people to work at good-paying jobs now. But doesn't it make more sense putting people to work building wind generators, solar cells, and constructing more Earth-wise energy projects and more fuel-efficient cars and trucks? The Psalms are full of references to God as creator. For example, the 147th Psalm speaks of a heavenly God who determines the number of the stars, giving them all their names, and an earthly God who sends rain upon the earth, makes the grass grow upon the hills, and gives the animals of the earth their food. The creation stories in Genesis highlight the belief that God is creator of all that is, and that God has called it good. And indeed, what God created is good. But that doesn't mean we can't still mess it up. The 5th century BC prophet Micah lived during a time of great economic disparity. The rich were getting richer and the poor poor. Sounds a bit familiar. The religious and legal authorities of the era knew all too well what was happening, and they did nothing to prevent it. That sadly has an all too modern ring to it as well. In Micah's time, religious practices overwhelmingly favored the wealthy. Exaggerating the point, Micah asked rhetorically, will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000 rivers of oil? That is, will God be pleased with only the super rich, what they can give as a temple offering? Then, answering his own question, Micah proclaims, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God. It is a response fitting for those corrupted by the influence of the super rich and powerful, as well as those richly blessed by the abundance of God's creation, but have taken the creation for granted and spoiled way too much of it. So, what can we do? Doing justice and loving kindness and walking humbly with God sounds so nice and so easy to talk about, but it is such a difficult thing to put into action. And when it comes to the care of our planet, it may seem that there is very little that we can do. But when we each do our part, it does add up. For 50 years since the first Earth Day, we've heard the phrase reduce, reuse, recycle. You've heard it. I hope you do it. But is there more that you can be doing to reduce and to reuse and to recycle? I reuse and reduce and recycle, but there is still more I can be doing. So I will continue to try to do more. Will you? Do you have a child, a grandchild, a niece or a nephew, or just another young person in your life? How about if you plant a garden with them or pick up litter like this community of faith does along Highway 55? Or how about taking yourself or taking a young person with you to a farmer market? Farmer market will open in Buffalo, hopefully next month when the weather gets nice. Check out an appropriate book about the environment at the library and read it to a young person or read it with them. Or take a walk at Nye Nature Center or other set aside nature areas to enjoy the wonder and splendor of God's beauty. Also, no matter what your age, consider writing your legislators, both in St. Paul and in Washington, about environmental issues. I know that makes a difference. I've been told it makes an especially big difference when it is a high school age student who writes the letter. And if you are of voting age, consider a candidate's stance on the environment the next time you're in a voting booth. I know I will, and I pray that you will too. We each have been abundantly blessed. I pray that our children and our children's children have the same opportunity to find the Creator God in the beauty of a sunrise, in the song of a loon, a rainbow's arc after a summer's rain, and in all the grandeur our Creator has blessed us with. So let me close with some pictures of God's good creation and the thoughtful words of United Church musician Brian Sergio. Newton.
Sometimes the earth and its beauty hits me so hard that it almost hurts. God, you are some kind of artist, and I'm a big fan of your handiwork. When I see pastel sunset It's like God is signing God's name. Another magnificent, one of a kind, worth more than this whole world could pay. God made this green world green, air and water clean. We come from the earth, and to earth we will return. Let's go back to Genesis 2 and we learn humans are here in the garden to serve. Service is the purpose of God-given power. We are more the earth's than earth is ours. We are more the earth's than earth is ours. When God gave dominion to humans, you know, I don't think that God ever had in mind a license to take the earth prisoner and to lock her in chains made of dollar signs. The earth and its fullness is Yahweh's. Stamp that verse in our property rights. That means that the land is not ours to exploit. It's just placed in our care for a while. God made this green world green, air and water clean. We come from the earth, and to earth we will return. Let's go back to Genesis 2 and we learn humans are here in the garden to serve, and service is the purpose of God-given power. We are more the earth's than earth is ours. We are more the earth's than earth is ours. There's a demon named corporate pollution, and its minions reach deep in the government. Some folks just mimic Rush Limbaugh, say there's no crisis in the environment. God knows we're wounding this planet. One styrofoam cup, one toxic waste dump, one acid rain drop, one oil tank spill, one SUV war, one trip to the store at a time. And maybe it's time we disciples of Christ worked harder to live greener lives. God made this green world green, air and water clean. We come from the earth, and to earth we will return. Let's go back to Genesis 2 when we learn humans are here in the garden to serve. Service is the purpose of God-given power. And we are more the earth's than earth is ours. Yes, we are more the earth's than earth is ours. We are more the earth's than earth is ours. We are more the earth's than earth is ours.
Muting. Discussion time. I actually gave you the questions today. What does the line in Brian's song, "We are more the earth than earth is ours," mean to you? We are more the earth than the earth is ours.
I get the second half of it, however you'd say it, that like we don't have ownership of the earth. It's borrowed. I'm here for a time being, and the earth will be here long after me. So that part is what I think of when I hear the line. Yeah,
But I also think there's as far as the first part, we are more the Earth's than Earth is ours. Nature has a way of, whether we like it or not, kind of trying to fix itself. For example, if a house is abandoned, it eventually is gonna mold, and it's eventually gonna fall down, and nature's gonna kind of take it back, in a sense, because that's what nature does. And so we like to think that we are in charge and of our earth, but we're really not. It has its own power and own way that we can't fully control.
So the Earth has been here roughly 4.3 billion years, and scientists say that it'll probably be here another 4 billion years or so. It's about halfway through its existence. So we won't be here in 4 billion years. So that the Earth will get its way. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I mean, we definitely have an influence. I mean, we're seeing that. Ole and I were just talking this morning. We've had so much wind lately. More than we remember in the past. Why, I don't exactly know, but I tend to think is that the climate change that we've started with our practices. Is it part of that? Probably, I would think. But ultimately, I also believe the only one we're really going to wind up hurting the most is ourselves, and the Earth is somehow going to recover itself. Humanity could go away, but the Earth will still be here.
So let me juxtapose that thought with the picture that's there. The picture is actually a question or something to think about and talk about for a minute. That picture, it's called Earthrise, was taken by astronauts on Apollo 8 in 1968. And at the time, it's the furthest picture ever taken of the Earth. And it just shows the Earth rising over the surface of the moon. And what strikes me in that picture is mostly the Earth set against the blackness of space and the barrenness of the moon. Neil deGrasse Tyson, well-known astrophysicist, was on the Tonight Show this last week, and he said that scientists have just discovered planet number 5,000 in the galaxy, which is kind of remarkable that how they're able to do that and identify literally 5,000 planets. But we don't know if any of those planets support life. We only know of this one that we're on that supports life. And we know that a lot don't support life. So I agree with what you're saying, Sharon, that nature heals itself in a way. I also think of how unique we are in the vastness of the universe. Not that there may not be others or other life out there, but just how unique we are from what we know. And that makes it pretty special in my mind. So a question for the adults: how has the climate and the natural world changed since you were a child? So you just mentioned the wind,
The wind,
wondering about the wind?
it seems like it's so windy lately. I mean, we had wind in the past, but not not as much and consistently as we seem to have lately. A lot of the winters haven't been as snowy or as cold as I remember as a kid.
What else?
I know that, my mom still kind of tells the story about the year that I was born, and right around that time, so it must have been early 1980s, and there was so much snow where we were at that it was up to the second floor windows, which is something that, and granted, I lived in southern Minnesota at that time, and at that area, they do get more snow than here, but it feels like it's, and then this year when I was looking at some of the lakes as we were driving by, I'm like, they're a lot lower than they were like 5-6 years ago when I was out, you know, we could be in a cycle if you want to make that argument, but it is, I don't know, I certainly feel like in the last year has been far more windy in the last year than it has been before.
Well, weather certainly is cyclical. There's all sorts of different cycles. Southwest, though, hasn't been as dry as it is for 1,200 years. That's a long cycle in my mind. Maybe it's not a cycle. You were thinking there, Ole, what have you experienced in your life?
Well, kind of like Sharon was saying, it's like, even as a kid, I remember much more snow for much longer period of time over the winter months. When I was in high school, it was a tradition for myself and some of my buddies. We would go hit the ski slopes for the first time Thanksgiving weekend. I can't remember, well, the last time I remember there being that much snow was it 91 when we had the Halloween blizzard? That's the only time that I can remember since that point where there would have been even close to enough snow by Thanksgiving to allow the ski slopes, natural snow, by the way, to allow the ski slopes to open up. But we used to do it every year. And it would extend out to the end of May, oftentimes into April. There would be considerable snow. And we're not seeing that anymore.
Some kind of thing with the lakes freezing over. It seems like now it's well into January before you can get a big fish house out there. Whereas it used to be it used to be December. By Christmas time, you usually had your fish houses out there and you could drive out there, and it seems much later now.
I know our lake hasn't frozen the last couple of years until New Year's or maybe a day or two before.
Yeah.
That's true. What about in terms of, other than climate change, what about in terms of environmental damage? What have you experienced?
Well, it's much more frequent, and to me, one of the most recent ones is the oopses with this oil pipeline that came through northern Minnesota over the last year. We're seeing more and more industrial spills, environmental spills, whether it's an oil slick in the ocean, whether it's as they're constructing this pipeline, they go so deep that they puncture water aquifers, and they're not supposed to be anywhere close to that deep. And the pollution that's showing up, and the amount of things that show up even after a winter. We were driving back from our place up north yesterday and noticing how much trash there is in the ditches. It doesn't seem to matter what part of the state, what part of the country. we're back to everybody just uses the earth for a garbage can.
I read this week that, kind of building on what you just said, I read this week that the Environmental Protection Agency says that approximately 50% of the lakes and rivers in the United States are unsafe to swim in or drink the water from. That's crazy.
Mhm.
That's just crazy.
And what I, having grown up farming, the other thing I noticed is now, years ago, you had this marginal spot over here, it's a little low, so you just left it. Now, they tile everything and every inch they can possibly turn into a farm field, they've turned into a farm field. Well, where's the wildlife gonna go? I mean, and the other thing is the chemicals they use now. When I was a kid, we didn't use chemicals. Well, it was a cost thing and it just wasn't as prevalent as it is now. Now they're putting on all kinds of chemical treatments and onto farm fields, and some of that naturally runs off. And gee, no wonder our waters are the way they are.
When I was growing up, even in suburban, Twin Cities in the spring times when the songbirds returned, there were times our backyard would be full of songbirds and robins and other stuff.
Mhm.
I really struggle some days to see a bird. They're just not nearly as prevalent as they were back then.
Now that you say that, Jeff, I'm thinking I've seen very few robins this year. I don't know, maybe it's been other years too, and I just haven't thought about it.
Yeah.
But we used to have all kinds of robins. I've not seen many. We have birds because we do feed them, and they come to the bird feeder. But even there, I don't feel like we have as many as we used to.
So my question for the youth, what are some things that concern you a lot about climate change and other changes happening to our planet?
Well, one of them is now picking up trash in our community. People need to do more of that stuff to help the earth.
Okay. And you're thinking about trash on the side of the road and whatnot. Yeah. Okay. Other things that concern our youth about climate and the planet?
I just looked it up and one second. There's 5.25 trillion pieces of plastic in the ocean.
5.2.
5.25 trillion.
Okay. I read this week that 90% of the plastic produced since 1950 is still in existence. It doesn't degrade.
I also heard this week they now detect it in our blood,
Really?
plastic in our bloodstream. They've detected it in the air and the food that we eat,
I knew they detected it in fish and stuff, but now it's in our blood.
in our bloodstream, plastic particles. There was a study, I forget where it was, Norway, some place over in Europe, and they can detect the plastic in our blood. They don't know what it means, to our health or anything, but, right.
Just serve up a glass of crude oil,
I've also heard that even though, and I don't know, I haven't done enough research to figure out how true this is, but we're not actually recycling as much as we like to think that we're recycling. There's a lot of plastic that's not actually being recycled. We have certain plants, places that we were supposed to be sending our recycling, and a lot of them were in China. And they're not taking it anymore. And we don't have actual places here in the US to recycle because of many different constraints, I guess.
It's a dirty job to sort everything, and it doesn't pay well, and there are environmental issues. I read that recently that 20 to 30% of what gets put in our recycling never gets recycled.
I actually wonder, our conversation about trash in the ditches and all of that and what you've seen, as you're driving back, as you mentioned, how much of that is from the lack of our ability to contain the trash versus those people that open the window and throw out the plastic bag or I don't see people, put my window down and throw out that plastic bottle I just finished on my Mountain Dew. And how much more of it is in your garbage can or it's somewhere and it blows out and then it's all over, which really says a lot of we're not even purposely doing it and it's just there because we can't contain it, which is scary.
We ran into that in our area. Like Art said he walked around our yard, just our yard, 3/4 of a garbage bag full of trash in the yard. And it's mostly because nobody just throws stuff out. It's the garbage cans falling over in the wind, in the rain,
Yep.
And therefore it blows everywhere.
We've had that with all this wind. It catches the garbage and there goes the lid and then things start blowing away.
Well, but even the trash like that's getting collected properly, and what do with it? We take it to landfills now. All you gotta do is drive up Highway 169 North Elk River where that big landfill is there, where a lot of stuff from our area is taken. And look at what's against their fencing. Now, they've got fencing that's supposed to contain it, but the fences are only, 8 feet high. Well, that stuff gets airborne, and now all of a sudden it's all over the county. Even though it's being quote unquote handled properly by taken to the landfill, it's not being contained by what's there.
And a part of that problem is us, not just us here, but us more generally as consumers, is that we've come to expect a high degree of convenience, which has really multiplied the amount of trash. My wife likes to go drive through Caribou, and get a cup of coffee. It's a one-time use. It's either paper, hopefully it's not styrofoam, hopefully it's just cardboard paper cup, kind of thing. She actually brings her mug like Ash has there and has them fill it up, and so she doesn't get a cup because she doesn't want to have to throw out that to the waste. But it's just so convenient now, just, get the plastic shopping bags at Target or Cup or wherever you go, and we've just become accustomed to all that. And it just
Disposable society.
Yeah. When we were in Europe, in Paris, the stores there, they don't give you a bag. And coming from here, you're kind of thrown because we're so conditioned to, well, there'll be a bag. I don't have to bring a bag. And I know places have tried to get rid of bags and people really protest and don't like that. But I mean, if we got rid of them, then you get used to it. We always bring our own bags. I have a little bag that folds up. It's in my purse all the time. I try very hard not to get an extra bag because I bring my own. I have a bag. I don't need a bag that I later got to throw away.
You know, Jeff, you asked earlier something, what has changed for us adults since we were children?
Yep.
Grocery bags. When a lot of us were kids, the only option for a grocery bag was a paper bag. Now, yes, that's trash, but at least a paper bag eventually will break down.
Yep.
You look now, and particularly you go to, I don't see it as much in the grocery only stores, but in the Targets and the Walmarts and places like that. If you're getting groceries bagged, they're bagging them in plastic.
Yep. Exactly right.
You know, plastic grocery bags were non-existent when I was a kid. Everything came in a paper bag that a lot of times got reused for whatever, but at least it would break down.
Cover serious.
Or when you got a package of needles wrapped in white paper and all.
Not on a foam
Right.
tray. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
true.
The diaper on the bottom of it.
yeah, exactly, right, exactly.
That's another one that's.
There was, what was interesting is right before me and David went to Kenya in 2018, they banned plastic bags. Altogether, the government, or leader, whatever, they just banned them. And a lot of that was, there's many reasons that they did that. One of the main ones was litter. And even by the time we got there a few months later, or it might have been a year before we went, whatever, people that had been there before could see a significant difference in the streams and the trash that was around those streams. Because in Kenya, you have to pay for a lot of getting rid of your trash. Similar to here, the structures are not there as well as they are here in the US, so people just threw stuff. And by getting rid of that disposable thing, we were already seeing, and I'm excited to, someday I hope to make it back there, and I'd be curious to see how it's even changed, because still, it looked like a lot of trash to me when I was there. I was like, and then but people that had been there prior to that said there was a significant difference in the level.
Interesting. We're short on time, but I do want to just kind of throw out, well, and get some response to these questions. 100 years from now, what do you think people will say about how humanity responded to global warming and other damage to Earth's environment?
I feel like they're gonna look back and go, why didn't we respond sooner? This has been talked about for many years and hasn't been well responded to, shall we say? Now scientists are saying we're on the brink of no return. And I still don't see a lot of urgency, if you will, with our government, with a lot of people. I don't see an urgency to change, to do something different. So I think they're going to look back and go, why didn't they listen? They were warned.
What were you thinking?
I think they'll look back and say we didn't respond.
Well, true, because
In all honesty, what have we done to try to respond?
we have made some strides in, say, solar energy and wind power, alternative energy, but I feel like we're doing it pretty slowly.
So the next question is, what would you like people to say about us in 100 years?
I would like them to say we worked harder at fixing the problem that we're facing.
Okay.
I think, and I'm not saying I'm any better than anybody else with this. It's we are complacent because life is good and life is, we have a lot of conveniences that we take for granted. And we don't want to have to make sacrifices. But
Yeah, so the question is, what will it take to make this happen?
I don't know.
Maybe we should ask our young people what they think it'll take.
What will it take?
Like, you would need more people to pick up, like more people to help around our community more.
Okay. More people at the table.
I think one of the reasons is because a lot of information is just not getting out to the general public. Like, I go on the internet a whole lot and I see rarely anything about trying to pick up, trying to reuse. I don't hear about any of that, and I'm on the internet daily. One of the reasons is I don't think the word's getting out there to a vast majority of people.
But then the words that are getting out are being contradicted.
Yep.
So you've got a significant portion of the population that is so set in their ways that they, I don't know how to, they water down the impact that this is truly having, and they take away the validity of it. And granted, you'll never prove something 100% one way or another, but it's become so strong that, and the internet, you can find whatever you want to be true will be true on the internet.
I think there's an element of changing the paradigm, and meaning, I think we need to find a way to not look at it of how can I take care of the earth? As much as that's the message we're talking about here today, it's our responsibility to take care of it. I think when you shift people's paradigm to be from one of convenience maybe to quality, like there's sort of that triangle. You can get something fast, you can get something cheap, or you can get something good, but you can't get all three of them. You're gonna get certain, you can maybe get two, you can get all three at kind of a mid-range, you can get one really good. Right now, we focus on cheap and fast, and not as much quality. Like, I think how long a refrigerator lasts nowadays versus what it did how many years ago. Now, how many years ago that refrigerator was pumping out all sorts of stuff it shouldn't have been too in the 70s or 80s or whatever. So I think we have to shift the paradigm to focus on maybe the quality part of it. And then that way people won't be so willing to be a disposable society. And it's like, you give me a quality X and I'll pay more for it because I know it's quality, it's gonna last me longer. And then I won't think of how fast can I just throw this away because I am fast and cheap right now because that's the society we live in.
I've replaced 2 water heaters since January. And I asked the plumber, what's the deal? What do I buy that's gonna last? And he said, they're all the same. He said, they're built to last 5-6 years now. You're lucky if you get something older than that, you know?
And I think that is the challenge that we're against. We live in a world that is run by corporations, run by business. And business doesn't want it to last long. They want you to be buying that again. They're not looking for it to stay. And until we can, as a people, have that power to say, you know what, I want this and I'm going to pay for it and I need you to deliver it to me, I don't know where we're gonna get.
We gotta get away from what I call our throwaway society.
Yes. And changing that paradigm is a great way to do it. I'm just wondering, is there any corporation or any business that's going to listen to that because of the fact that it means less dollars?
The
Potentially.
corporate model says they can't
Mhm.
because they have a fiduciary responsibility to make money for their shareholders. And doing something simply for the sake of the earth, for example, if it doesn't make them money, they legally can't do it. They can give money away, perhaps, for charitable things and do some things, perhaps that might save them in the long run. But they have a legal obligation to make money for their shareholders.
But I think they can, some of the ways that it's different or that they can deal with that is you have people now that I'm not gonna go work for company X because they don't take care of you. They don't, and so you won't get me as a worker.
Yep.
Because I'm not gonna show up. Or you might, I'll come to the other company that's taking care of the earth and I'll say, yep, you can have 5% of my pay because I know you're taking care of the earth versus go to this big Goliath that is not, and I could get paid way more, but it's at the cost of where I live.
Well, and I will shop at some places and not at other places because I know that they make a charitable contribution to organizations that I support.
Right.
So so as a consumer, we can make a difference. And I have to keep telling myself that because sometimes it's just more convenient to go to the other store. So it's always there. Go ahead.
One of the things I don't like is when, like on Friday, when it was Earth Day, and like companies are like, I'll give this amount of percent to the earth for that one specific day. I don't like that because it's like, you're just pushing it just because it's that day. Because it's like, oh, we care when it's relevant, not when it actually matters.
And
And I
not
think
as a
it's-
corporate way of doing business.
It's that sort of attitude, particularly of younger generations, that will change the world. You will change it because you have that attitude and you're gonna go, I'm not doing it. I'm not showing up to help you on this one day because you're only showing up for us on this one day. And I think the youth